And now, it's time for the Spirit Campfire, starring Ted Nugent and John Brinkus. It's the show about the physics of spirituality with attitude.
Wow. Oh, my Lord.
You expect me to believe, Brinkus, that we have another electronic Spirit Campfire with the Motor City goofball. This is what you expect the world to believe.
I do. And this campfire is going to be unlike any other because we have a very, very special guest. This is not just any guest. This is somebody who paved the way for rock and roll right alongside Uncle Ted. Uncle Ted, tell us about the special guest tonight.
Well, you know, I have so many killer friends. The guy that runs the feed mill is my hero. And the welder, of course, the welder, I genuflect at the altar of welders. So I have my priorities straight. But you have to admit, killer, soulful, guitar-driven American rhythm and blues, gospel and rock and roll, and all those original black, emotional, authoritative influences really drive the best music in the world. And so I will go ahead and tell you that all the best guitar players in the world are my buddies, whether they know it or not. But tonight, we actually have a man who is still clinging to the baton as handed off by Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Lightning Hopkins. We've got the legendary icon. This is way better than A-list. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top has agreed to join the Nugent Brinkus Spirit Campfire because, after all, it is the physics of spirituality. And with Gibbons here, it's going to be some really hot sauce, greasy, backstrap, soul-dripping attitude. So it's the physics of spirituality with attitude. Billy Gibbons on this, what is it, the 25th of June, 2020, Brinkus.
What are we in?
Are you kidding me? ZZ Top. Billy Gibbons is going to join us. He's not only one of the most, creative and adventurous, authoritative guitar players in the world, but he's just my buddy. We've done so many concerts together, going all the way back to, I think, 1974, 1975. So the Spirit Campfire with Billy Gibbons, how cool is that, Brinkus?
I mean, come on. Listen, all I have to say is you said to me, dude, if you're ever having a down day, just hang out with me because great people show up. And so Billy Gibbons just showing up is something really special. So everybody who wants to ask Uncle Ted a question, we're going to do that early tonight. So make sure you go to the Facebook page, go to Ted's Facebook page or Killcliff or Grunt Style or anywhere that we're streaming. And you're going to be able to ask Ted a question early on. But I had the first question to Ted. Ted, you were talking about how you and Billy, and, obviously when you guys were coming up, just take people back to how far back you guys go.
Well, we're going to get the gory details from Billy because I think we're about the same age. I think we were born, I was born in 48. He might've been born in 49. I think he was born in 1949. So I know he respects his elders. But I made a statement just a moment ago that Billy is one of the pioneers of not just taking the baton from the founding fathers of rock and roll, the electric guitar gods of Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley, and how they were influenced by those amazingly soulful, emotional journeys by the Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf. But he not only holds on to that baton, he tossed it up in the air and set it on fire. What he and ZZ Top have done, and we're going to get into it with Billy, but not just Chuck and Bo, but the Ventures and Lonnie Mack and Dwayne Eddy and the guys who first took Les Paul's electrification of the heretofore background strumming instrument of the guitar. And once it was electrified, thank God, I think Billy and I will celebrate, we have many times, that we were born at the time where creative, adventurous, musical, Lewis and Clark exploratory geniuses, boy, that's the description that I think most perfectly describes what Lonnie Mack and Dwayne Eddy and the Ventures, and certainly Elvis's amazing guitar player, and so many that Billy and I were influenced by. And once we got wind of that, way before the Beatles, way before the Stones and the Kinks, Billy was already hanging 10. His toes were over the tip of the electric guitar surfboard going into uncharted water. So he and I go back way before he and I met. I think we did our first concert. I think it might have still been the Amboy Dukes in 73, 74. But we did a number of tours with ZZ Top, both in the earliest days, 74, 75, 76. But again, over the years. So we've had a great guitar fire communication. And more importantly, I emphasize this all the time, John, the work ethic. The work ethic of a guy like Billy Gibbons and Frank Beard and Dusty Hill and all those great musicians who worked our asses off to make sure that when somebody paid $1 to come and see us at the Armadillo World headquarters in Austin, that we delivered the beast. And if Billy Gibbons has always delivered something on the guitar and just his whole sonic bombast, soulful presentation, it's best described as a musical beast. So to have Billy Gibbons on our electronic campfire here, the Spirit Campfire, is pretty damn special. And I'm here to share all these wonderful gods of thunder, musical thunder that I've been so honored and privileged to collaborate and jam and perform with all these years.
All right. So before Billy Gibbons comes on, we're going to take some questions from the audience. I think that we have Greg from Nebraska. Greg, unmute your microphone. And there you go.
Hey, Ted, how's it going?
Hello, Greg. Welcome to the Spirit Campfire. This is like a Nebraska, South Dakota, Yankton electronic campfire, isn't it?
Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah, I was telling the dude that was letting me on here, I met you here a few years back up at Yankton. I said, the old Dakota Archery.
Sure, Dakota Archery and Sports in Yankton, South Dakota, with Bruce Cull and Scott, the masters of the mystical flight of the arrow. Bruce Cull is actually, and that's the headquarters in Yankton, South Dakota, right there at the epicenter of Nebraska and South Dakota, and I guess Minnesota comes in there, and Iowa. But yeah, he's the president of the National Field Archery Association and one of the walking, talking great experts of backstrap dreams. Is he not, Greg?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, it was amazing that day. They must have just opened because it was my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and myself and you in the store.
Well, you know, when I go places, I hang out, and if I have any piss and vinegar to share, which obviously I do, it's because I hang out with shit kickers like you. When I go places, I don't go to the hotel room and order room service. I like to hang out with my fellow American, working hard, playing hard family. So it was good meeting you. And that if ever there's a great place to meet Ted Nugent, it would either be at a rock and roll concert or in an archery shop. So I think we connected if we did not.
You bet. That's cool.
Awesome. Well, good seeing you, man. Have you enjoyed?
Thank you so much, Greg.
You bet. Good seeing you, Greg. Give my best to everybody there back in the Cornhusker. I hope to get out there again. I haven't hunted South Dakota or Nebraska in the last few years because I so love to be home. But you got a great Midwestern heartland flyover spirit out there. So, Greg, tell everybody to go to huntthevote.org. huntthevote.org. And I try to keep our Spirit Campfire PG-13, but the biggest request I've got, John, is people want
easy. Oh, easy. Come on, Ted. It's a family show.
PG-13.
Family show right now.
There it is right there.
Come on. All right. You go to tednugent.com to get that. The only thing, listen, if you want to get Spirit Campfire gear, go to thespiritcampfire.com. Pick up awesome merchandise that doesn't have some obscenity on it. But go to tednugent.com to get the red hat.
The greatest compliment you can be given. I was told by a funk brother in Detroit that on guitar, I am a bad mother. That's what he said. That's the greatest compliment in the world.
That is. But along those lines, Ted, do you have your electric guitar near you?
I do. I have a Gibson Birdland here. Gibson. I don't know, and I apologize for the sound because it sounds so good in the room I'm in, but over the electronic campfire stuff, I love is that a greasy ass tone or what?
That is, look, it's a definitely greasy tone, but I want to take us back to the 70s while we're waiting for Billy. We know that Billy's going to be coming on in about 10 minutes. Take us back to the 70s when you were coming up with and experimenting with new licks. I mean, obviously, you guys, everybody was messing around sort of the same pentatonic format, but somehow the licks that you were coming up with somehow separated you from everybody else. What was sort of your methodology that experimented with those normal patterns that made them Ted Nugent?
Well, I mention all the time the incredible work ethic of the great musicians and bands out there, because they really do bust their ass. And if I do say so myself, I never stopped playing guitar. Now, when I went to the bathroom and I went to sleep, even during those occasions, I wouldn't be surprised if the guitar was certainly within reach. But my point is, John, is that we all played Chuck Berry stuff. We got that honky tonk grinding thing going, but with the Birdland, I played so loud in the basement with the Amboy Dukes and before the Amboy Dukes that the Birdland would start feeding back, which I can't do here right now, but it would start making noise and you'd have to hang on to it. So that's where the whole you got a lot of chick, 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 chick in between. So it really boils down to taking what Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley created. And again, I mentioned the Ventures and Lonnie Mack and so many great, pioneers. But the way I played so loud with a guitar that's made for jazz, that's a hollow body with a hand-carved arch spruce top by the gods at Gibson in Kalamazoo, Michigan, that it would start to roar and make noises if you didn't position your body and hang on to it with the meat of your hand. So maybe it'll be defined a little better on an acoustic guitar, but the way I muffle the strings, and the Mitch rather, that in between every lick is a direct result of I got to keep smacking the strings or the son of a bitch will eat my face. It just gets so noisy and so loud, which, by the way, the noisier and the louder, the sexier it is. And so I literally had to adapt my physical approach to holding and playing the guitar so that the meat of my hand was constantly muffling strings that I didn't want to start to feed back. I wanted to pick the notes to feed back. And so it's a matter of trial and error and experimentation and practice and dedication. Much like the greatest athletes and the greatest artists and the greatest welders and the greatest electricians and the greatest boat builders and the John and Henry Ford's assembly line. So practice, 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 practice.
And with practice and practice and practice, one of the expressions about there being happy accidents where and then something happened. What's a good story you have for us about, you're messing around and it just kind of happened. It wasn't something that was thought out as much. And it was the best happy accident you've had sort of practicing and messing around.
I think I'm a happy accident.
Well, you are a happy accident. We know that.
I create happy accidents. There's a vapor trail of happy accidents in my everyday life. And that's interesting because when I was playing the guitar as a kid, I started when I was 6, 7 years old, took lessons from Joe Podorczyk by the time I was 10 at Capitol School of Music on Grand River Avenue in Detroit, playing on a big, fat, ugly Epiphone guitar that I could hardly manage. But my point is that I didn't know the term out of body. I was too young and mushy-brained. I didn't know nothing. I never heard the word samurai. I never heard the word stream of conscious. I never heard the term physics of spirituality. I never heard the term road less traveled. But instinctually, when I head to the woods with my bow and arrow as a kid, I would want to beaten path. I would want to go through that muck where nobody would dare go there. I'm going there. So as I play these funny notes, like for example, just a minute ago on the Birdland, I mean, I don't know any scales. When I play stuff like, mean, nobody's ever played that pattern. I never played that pattern before.
Right.
I get into a spiritual Lewis and Clark. What would happen with this fret before that fret and bending it semitone? None of this nomenclature I was aware of as I was doing it, but I would seek that untapped note that I heard. I jammed with B.B. King, John. I was sitting right next to, rubbing shoulders with B.B. King, and he bends the notes into these emotional, sexy semitones. And so I picked up on that, and I realized that you don't always want to hit the note. Maybe you want to sneak up and grease. And boy, having Billy Gibbons on with us tonight, if anybody's been the master of sneaking up on a greasy note, it's Billy Gibbons. So that uncharted territory, all my favorite musicians, whether it's Yusef Lateef or John Coltrane or Billy Gibbons, they make notes that are their own identity and statement. Just, it can be the same note in a pattern, but the way they hit it. So if you're going to play killer music, you better have a guitar welt on your chest to prove that you're trying really hard. For probably 40 years, I had a welt on my chest from humping over the birdland, just letting myself go into a uncharted, like, I don't know, like
You're going into Zen land.
Into the spirit world, John, like our
into the Spirit Campfire world. Here's something that you said that I want to ask you this. Did you really mean to say that you don't know any scales?
Well, I don't. I mean, I could probably bump into one, but somebody asked me what scale.
Do you know modes?
I say I only.
Do you know like how to play Lydian or Mixolydian?
No, I wouldn't have. Some people always comment, "Is that a pentatonic or whatever the word is?" And I go, "I haven't the faintest idea. All I know is." Oh my
God! Now come on. So you don't even know how to flatten a seventh?
I could. Yeah, that would probably be a sixth, wouldn't it? I mean, I know all the basic chords, but I find notes that don't belong. For example, you hear me do a lot of this. Now that's not even a legal note then.
It's not.
You got to milk blood out of a musical statement. It's got to be emotional and human, and then none of that. It's got to be all of that and be able to go. In fact, when I first started jamming on David Letterman, Paul Schaefer, who's one of the most musical forces in the world.
He could be one of the smartest musicians ever.
Yes, no question. Well, Paul Schaefer, I came into the studio to jam with the band, and he ran up to me and hugged me, and he shook me by the shoulders. He's a little Canadian guy. He shook me by the shoulder and goes, "Ted Nugent, I want you to know that opening feedback note in the guitar solo of Journey to the Center of the Mind by the Amboy Dukes is the greatest musical note in the history of sound." And I went, "Yeah, I think you got a point there, because it's a semitone that doesn't belong in the B chord we just wrapped up. It's falling into the next A chord." And I couldn't have analyzed it like this when I created it, but I understand why he loved that note, because it's so wrong. It's not a note. It's a note looking for an identity. And he just
That's crazy.
That.
So soon, as soon as I actually just moved down to Georgia, so I don't have my whole setup, but I'm not going to, look, I play guitar. I'm no Ted Nugent, but I'm almost the opposite of Ted Nugent in that I learned all the scales, all the modes, how to do it. And then I decided, here's how you break the rules. You just never learned the rules and said, I'm going to make it up as we go along.
And again, jamming with Bill White on bass guitar and Gregor Rama and Rick Lober and Andy Solomon and Dave Palmer. This was one of the original Amboy Dukes. Certainly Gary Hicks, my original guitar player, and Pete Prim from the Lourdes in 1959. I was so inspired by the grooves, and we're doing classic rock and roll songs, Long Tall Sally and James Brown songs, stuff like. And I learned all those basic patterns, but I didn't know a scale. To this day, I suppose I could fumble into one, but I don't know any. I think that unleashes a more adventurous spirit, like the Journey to the Center of the Mind guitar lick goes. I mean, every note is just bending and greasy. It's like a good barbecue, dripping on your shoe in between bites. That's what it's like.
This is going to be such a treat. I know that Mr. Gibbons is going to be joining us in just a minute here. I think he's in the waiting room. I think I can see in the waiting room that Billy Gibbons is going to be joining us. If we're able to rotate his picture so that it's the other way, because right now it's pointed up. If it's horizontal,
Dash is our technician, and Shemaine's not there.
Dash or Herbert or somebody we can communicate, because we've got Billy Gibbons getting ready to come in here. So let me see. While we straighten up Billy's picture, Ted, I want you to lead in with a little bit of an intro for me. Of a backstory of Billy Gibbons, and we're going to get Herbert to straighten up the picture, and then we're going to let him in.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to show Billy this picture, but this is Billy Gibbons and Tony Dukes and me, I think around 1977. We were on a hunting trip together in the hill country of Texas, and I got to know the beast behind the musical beast, and he is such a down-to-earth, real honest to God, working hard, playing hard neighbor of a guy. Now, maybe he didn't want me to tell you that, but I just did. And I learned that we both came from that classic, fundamental work ethic, street sass and awareness, and a reverence for those founding fathers of the most meaningful music in the world. Again, I'm going to repeat the Howlin' Wolf and the Muddy Waters and the Mose Allison and the Booker T, and morphing right up into Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis. I think Billy will expand on that. But we had a great hunting camp together with Tony Dukes, and I think it's true that Tony Dukes, this guy right here, who God rest his soul, he passed away a few years ago. He was instrumental, both literally and figuratively, in seeking and finding the holy grail of guitars. I think he got some of Billy's earliest 1958 and 1959 Les Pauls, and Tony Dukes also found some original 1958 and 1959 Les Pauls for me, because they have a life of their own. And nobody that I can think of, I think of Mike Bloomfield, and certainly the Jimi Hendrixes of the world who played Les Pauls on occasion. But Billy Gibbons really took that classic Les Paul meaty, beaty, bouncy sound, and he turned it into a musical genre unto his own. So it's going to be great to have Billy Gibbons at our campfire here.
Hey, Ted, what is, before we let Billy in the room, tell me about the very first time that you met him.
Well, I think it was during the Fandango, and I think we were still using the name Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes. I had gone through so many musicians seeking the ultimate musical statement and surrounding myself with the best virtuosos I could find, that ZZ Top was already leaving a mark. And they would play all the same clubs and all the same halls and all the same venues that we played. And it was down in New Orleans. I think it's where they recorded the Fandango album. Billy will be able to tell us here in a minute. But they played all the time. The Amboy Dukes did, I think our record was 39 gigs in a row with no days off. And I drove the station wagon and I set up the gear, and I could see that same outrageous animal work ethic by Billy and Dusty and Frank. And so there was a kindred spirit. Plus, when the official Ted Nugent ZZ Top tour happened, I was opening up, guys. They had that Texas stage with birds on a top of his amplifiers. I think there was a javelina and there was a buffalo, and everybody was scared to death that if Ted Nugent was going to open up for ZZ Top, I might shoot and eat the buffalo. But I never did. I respected their stage props. I was just moved that there was such a unique and dynamic Texas spirit to what they played. the style and the authenticity of their music, and certainly having vultures and buffaloes on stage, it certainly inspired me.
That's amazing. Hey, Ted, what was your impression? There obviously was a point in time when, you know, back in the 70s, there was sort of the 70s version of your music and everybody's music. And then there was the 80s. What was that transition like in terms of, look, the 70s had a style and the 80s came along and things were changing. What was that transition like for you musically?
It didn't happen. That's what it was like.
Well, that's right.
Well, you know, I'm an adventurous guy, and we had the imprinted profile Ted Nugent.
Okay,
music.
now I've got Ted.
You think we got the Reverend Billy's coming on?
Reverend Billy's coming on. We're just getting his picture squared away.
Yeah, because he's so good looking. I would hate to just have his voice. He's got a lovely voice.
You're sick.
So handsome. So anyhow, what I discovered that Billy and I were cut from the same cloth. Now, he might not admit that, and he might not want me to say that. But when it comes to piss and vinegar and spirit and attitude and reverence for the founding fathers of the greatest blues and rhythm and blues and rock and roll, I think Billy and I are like blood brothers from the same spirit beast. That's what I think.
All right, here we go. Herbert, go to a 3-box. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Billy Gibbons.
Look out, y'all. Look out. Look out.
Come on, Billy G. Reverend. Welcome to the campfire, my friend.
Man, I'm gathered around. Let's get some more wood. Let's make this thing go all night long.
Now, Billy, all I got to say is welcome to this little electronic global celebration with Uncle Ted celebrating the founding fathers of the greatest music in the world. But on behalf of everybody who loves music and cherishes the enrichment of killer music, especially guitar-driven music, thank you for enriching our lives. Thank you for this unbelievable soundtrack to the greatest moments in our lives. For you and ZZ Top, a big salute from Uncle Ted.
Well, thank you, sir. I'll throw it back on you. You know, I was talking just recently, yesterday, about how do you make great rock and roll guitar sounds. And I've got to tell you, a lot of people, they have finally discovered Ted Nugent was the guy that brought the Gibson Birdland jazz guitar into the rock and roll realm. And to this day, nobody knows how you've done it.
It was out of the ordinary, wasn't it, Billy?
Definitely so. Yeah, definitely so.
Have you ever tried to wrestle a birdland without it feeding back and eating you? I mean, it's at the volume that we used to play. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you mastered that Les Paul thing. You didn't start on a Les Paul, did you?
Well, you know, you gave me. I've got to show. First of all, I got to show off a little bit. We got this new version of the BFG Rock and Roll Gearhead book, and inside that book, it's got a special page that I'm in favor of. After I saw you playing the Birdland, I tried to do you one better. I found this Gibson ES5. Remember that crazy thing?
Absolutely, man. That's a beast. That's got a big, fat, hollow body sound, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was the toggle switch was pickup 1 or pickup 2 or pickup 3 or slide it all the way over, and it was all.
Now, Billy, can you see? I just showed everybody this photo. Do you remember this photo?
I'm afraid I do. I'm sorry to say.
That's, you know, we were talking about Les Pauls and guitars and how you've really delivered, you know, and harnessed what they did in Kalamazoo, Michigan back in 58 and 59. There's just something really unique and spiritual and big and fat and greasy and hung and unlimited in its vocal capabilities of the old Les Pauls. But you didn't start on a Les Paul. That was Tony Dukes. Did he actually find one of your original 59 Les Pauls?
Well, Tony came into the scene after you and I, if you remember, it was Tony that brought you and I together way, way back. We were actually going to go out in West Texas, and we were stomping the we were stopping the ranch lands down in the hunting grounds, and as you and I got to talking, the notion of how do we make all this work? How do we make loud sounds, and that was kind of the subject matter, but it was great. Now I'm going to throw one at you. As you and I were speaking of how you do it, how I do it, and how we think everybody else was doing it, it was B.B. King that came to me. I was sharing a dressing room with B.B. King, and he said, "Can I play your guitar?" And I said, "Wow, yeah, great." He picked it up and gave it a couple of strums, and he said, "Why are you working so hard?" And I didn't really know what he meant, and he said, "Here, try this," and he gave me Lucille, and the strings were so light, super light. And I looked at it because I was playing these big, telephone wires for strings. And he said, "Man," he said, "Those strings too heavy." And I said, "Well, isn't that what it requires to get that big blues sound?" He goes, "No." He said, "You need to get you some light gauge string." So
I don't think anybody plays a lighter string than you do. I play 10, 12, 15, 24, 34, 44. But somebody told me, our old buddy up there in Ardmore, Oklahoma, Audrey, told me that you play a size 7 E string.
There it is, my friend.
Look at that. And we've jammed together. We've done so many shows. John was asking me when we first met. I think it was when you guys were recording Fandango. What the hell was that hell-raising place down in New Orleans that you guys recorded? We always played at
the Warehouse.
The Warehouse, yes, like the Armadillo World Headquarters of Louisiana, right?
Well, the Armadillo was in Austin, and the Warehouse was down in New Orleans. That's when you and I first crossed paths, and we started comparing notes way, way back then.
And we've done so many gigs since then. But I think what everybody would really like to know is I'm always referencing how Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, they literally electrified what Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Mose Allison and Lightning Hopkins did. They were really down and dirty, a lot of acoustic grunting and grinding blues. But once it became electrified, is that when you really got hit between the eyes like I did?
I think so. We go back so far, and let's not leave out the British guys. If you remember, there was after the Beatles, then we started digging into what these guys were really doing. Leave it to the English. I mean, if they stumble onto a subject, they will take it down to the genetics.
Yeah.
And
isn't it true that the British invasion was really invading us with American music? On the first Beatles and Stones album was Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Motown songs. And so we were really influenced by those original Black heroes before there was a British invasion. You were born in 49, is that right?
I think you would agree with me that the British guys resurrected this great American art form that was kind of, they were the rescue agents. Here's this thing called blues, rhythm and blues. Soul music was still kind of fading. And I guess we could go down the list. The Beatles, Rolling Stones,
The Who,
Pretty Things. I mean, the list goes on. Eric Burden and his great group. All of these guys had discovered this wonderful art form called the blues.
Well, next week we're going to have another founding father. I first opened up for a band called Billy Lee and the Rivieras at the Walled Lake Casino outside Detroit in 1959. We were the opening act, the Lords. I was like, 13 or something like that.
Okay.
Not even that, 12. And there was a new band called Martha and the Vandellas, and there was a guy that had a hit record named Gene Pitney. Now, were you doing it as early as 58 and 59?
I remember those guys. Well, Martha and the Vandellas, I mean, come on. But Gene Pitney, Town Without Pity. What a great one. Gosh, that might something you and I might want to team up and do a cover version.
Did you ever hear Ronnie Montrose's instrumental of Town Without Pity?
I've heard about it.
It's good. He did a great job.
There's another great player.
Yep, great player. You know, we always see these lists of the greatest guitar players, but I never see my buddy Derek St. Holmes on it, or Dave Amato, or Tommy Shaw. And I just want to clarify that there are so many unsung heroes of the electric guitar out there that we could spend a whole show just dedicating reverence and appreciation for guys that you just don't hear about. Neil Schon, one of the greatest, and he's never on that list.
I think that that would make for a great. In fact, you'd probably have to expand it to a 24-hour broadcast to get everybody. I mean, you're right. There's so much influential stuff by some really, really influential players. Some of them have kind of stepped back into the shadows, but there's so much stuff that deserves to be brought to the forefront. Let's try and do that.
Yeah, we're getting kind of old, but maybe we could pull that off. So, Billy, I saw that Cuba adventure you did. Please tell the listeners here and the viewers of the Nugent Spirit Campfire what it was like to go down there, basically almost like you did back in the earliest days, just stripped down into uncharted territory, playing for an audience that they probably appreciated you guys showing up at that club more than anything in their lives. Tell us about that experience.
Well, the invitation arrived first by phone call. A buddy of mine in Los Angeles, he said, "Hey, I'm right around the corner." He said, "You got time to talk about going to the Havana Jazz Festival?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You've been invited." Wow. And I said, "Wow." I said, "That's quite an honor." I said, "However," I said, "this is going to take some thinking. I don't know if we want to crash a jazz festival with a rock and roll party." He said, "Well, do what you think you want to do." So we went back, and ironically, I had booked some time in the studio, and I went in and told the engineers we were going to go Cubanized, and of course they thought that, yeah, he's finally lost his mind. But it turned out to be quite a thing. In fact, I've got a copy of the very record that we released. This was Perfecto Mundo. This was our way to go down to Havana and see if we could fit in. And sure enough, it really worked. It was, in fact, if you go online, you can dig around a little bit. There's a great documentary. There was a team from the BBC followed us around, and it's quite fascinating. It's a very different kind of video documentary. It's not just about the music. It's about going through the back alleys, and it's something else.
Blending all those musical influences. Now, we had another killer musical guest on here recently, Tim Montana. And I understand that beyond the music, which would be more than enough to bond music lovers, but I understand you guys also share a love for Mexican food and titillating hot sauces. Tell me about the Billy Gibbons hot sauce. I want to get me some of that. I'll put some on my guitar.
Yes, indeed. B's and T's Whisker Bomb. And somebody said, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "Well, B's for Billy and T's for Tim." I met Tim back in the songwriting rooms, and that's what started it. And during one of the sessions, we took a break and we went into the commissary, and I saw Tim kind of whipping up this and whipping up that. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well," he said, "Man," I said, "I'm kind of like you. I like that hot sauce stuff." I said, "Really?" I said, "You got a recipe?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, step aside. Let me bring mine in." So as the sessions wore on, we kept returning to the commissary, and we decided, why don't we combine recipes? I said, "Well, we don't have time to put this in a bottle." He goes, "I've got a couple of guys down in Louisiana that do just that." So yeah, you can go online. It's whiskerbomb.com, and this is something crazy.
Whiskerbomb.com. Hey Billy, we had Tim Montana on just I think last week or the week before that, and
Yep.
one of the things that's very noticeable in his music is that he's kind of in between genres. He's not classical rock, right? He's not classical country. In terms of the influence that Ted, you and Ted, you guys were sitting in between genres as well. Like you weren't just you became so distinctive. What do you see in sort of the next generation of musician like in Tim?
Well, the good news for all the listeners that like to stretch the genres, Tim is just wrapping up. He just signed a big deal with BMG, and Michael Knox is leading the parade, taking Tim through the paces. I believe we'll see by Christmas time, Tim's next record is going to rock your world. He is really doing it right. He's doing a little bit of country, a little bit of rock, and everything in between. It's really a genre breaker. It's going to be good.
That's
Yeah, he was
amazing.
a real McCoy. We could tell that right away. Beyond the hot sauce and beyond the guitar tones. But let's talk guitar tones, because everybody out there wants to know whether they're a guitar player or not. Currently, you're using Magnatone amps like I am. Is that right?
Oh yeah, man. Our buddy
Ted.
Ted, who resurrected, Magnatone was such a great brand. Started in 1937 by the Dickerson brothers, and then they brought it to Los Angeles and launched the Magnatone brand. And they had that peculiar, wiggly tremolo vibrato. And Lonnie Mack. I mean, there's so many players that made a career out of that sound. So fortunately for guys like you and me and all the other guitar players that are searching for something really different, I think the Magnatone is the way to go. It's you can do Fender clean or Marshall rasp. It's really interesting.
Well, you know what I noticed, when I came down to Temple, the ZZ Top was doing a concert just south of our home here in Texas. And I got a hold of my ZZ Top people, and I got down there and we did an encore together. We performed Jailhouse Rock, the classic Elvis song. And you remember, Billy, I did not have my regular amps. I just brought a little 12-inch speaker. I think it's 30 watts. And you have to admit, you had this killer wall of Magnatones with that classic Gibbons, brisket dripping goo throughout the entire place. But you have to admit, they put a mic on that little ass amplifier of mine, and it actually cut the mustard, didn't it?
Dude, we were doing battle, and it came across just like melted butter. I mean, your sound was. I mean, it tucked in handsomely. It was quite handy. I got to say that was, and what a great song to play. You and I doing the background and letting Dusty cut loose on Jailhouse Rock. Come on.
Yeah. So tell me, what's the ZZ Boys doing these days? Our tours was canceled this year, so me and the boys are sobbing in our mug. A lot of heartbreak out there during this crazy Chinese virus episode. You guys are probably not doing any gigs either, are you?
Well, we're waiting for the curtain to rise. I think everybody is waiting for the curtain to rise. I noticed that you and I had enjoyed the possibility of going back out on the road and doing some gigs together. Let's wait and see what's going to make sense. We want to play it safe. Everybody's kind of there's a little trepidation. There's a lot of curiosity, but I think once we hit the pavement, we get the wheels rolling on the asphalt, we're going to go ahead and tear them up. And speaking of which, I better go out and do that. Thanks for having me on here, Ted. What a great exchange we've got going on. Let's go tear them up. How about it?
Well, God bless you, Billy. Give my best to Frank and Dusty and everybody back there. Pablo's a great friend. I've had a great run doing so many concerts with ZZ Top. And you notice whenever we play with you guys, I always stand there and take it all in. So you've been a big inspiration. You've really enriched millions and millions of people's lives, especially mine as a guitar guy. So thank you for joining us at the Spirit Campfire. And I'd like to keep in touch, number one, because I need to get your book, then I need to get your hot sauce, and then I need to jam with you again ASAP.
That's a good thing. I'm going to go get some logs so we can keep this campfire going. How about that?
All right, Billy. God bless you, man. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing that, man.
Thank you, brother.
Living up my best
Wow.
for the whole team. How about that, John? Billy Gibbons on the Spirit Campfire. How cool are we?
We, by we, you mean you.
But no, I can tell you were taking it all in, especially as a guitar player. My God, you're like you. I hope you were a sponge for the last half hour.
I was a sponge, and I was sitting in the background, and I'm like, look, I'm the, one of us is not in the Hall of Fame. One of us is not a rock legend. So,
well, that makes two of us. But I can handle it. But as you could tell, not just because he and I are old buddies and we've done so much stuff together, but all the best musicians, all the best so-called rock stars and legendary guys and celebrities and icons, they're just shit kickers like you and I. I mean, if we were at a deer camp or we were at a barbecue, Billy and Dusty and Frank and everybody I know is just what the gentleman that you just saw here on the Spirit Campfire. So it's really a reminder to people that beyond the insanity of Hollywood spotlights, we're really all just hellraisers and music lovers. So God bless Billy Gibbons, huh?
God bless Billy Gibbons. One of the things that really kind of like helped me through the lockdown was the ZZ Top documentary on Netflix.
It was
that
great.
Went around.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It went around like wildfire. And one of the elements that I found most interesting was when they were talking about how they took a 3-year hiatus. They kind of weren't in, obviously it was way pre-internet, it was pre-MTV. And when they came back together, they hadn't planned the whole beard thing, but they just hadn't shaved. And that's how it came along. They're like, that's what happens when you take 3 years off. You show up, you both have big beards. And obviously the irony being the only member of ZZ Top without a big beard has the last name Beard.
Well, let me comment on that because I see a lot of these new, direct TV and documentaries and behind the music and legendary rock star probes. There really is a self-inflicted curse with an artist because you do practice so much and you really want to hone your craft. And I've seen it with Journey and Foreigner and Aerosmith and ZZ Top and the Police and everybody. Every band goes through it because you want to play. You just want to play. And the worst person to manage a musician is the musician because they will walk all over you because you just want to play. So when a band like ZZ Top takes a 3-year hiatus, they're getting away from the insanity. That's why we've lost so many great people, the drugs and the alcohol, because they didn't know how to say, no, I don't need to make another record this month. And I don't need to go on tour as soon as I'm done with the record, or maybe even before. And so it starts to kick your ass. Look at me. I was so smart, if I do say so myself, by 78, 79, I started going, no, I need to go hunting. And of course, that healing powers of nature, I just knew instinctively as always being a hunter, what it represented to me. So instead of the drugs and the alcohol, or instead of getting in fist fights with your band members, though there were a few of those. In fact, we should have some of my band members on here sometime because I got some killer guys. That outdoor lifestyle really recharged my batteries, really fortified my spirit. And if you don't get away, over in Europe, I think they take like 4 weeks or 2-month vacations, which I don't know how that works. But my advice to everybody out there, and I don't care what your career might be, what your work is, you do need to escape. And so that 3-year hiatus of ZZ Top's decision was really a smart move so that they could back off and take a breath. And when they came back bigger than ever, much like Aerosmith did.
Yeah. What's interesting is that usually when you take a hiatus for something, you pick it up, you put it down, you come back to it. It's amazing how quickly your skills rise right back to where they were when you left off. Whether or not, think about it. Michael Jordan went to go play baseball and didn't play any basketball, and he comes back and he wins 3 more championships. It's kind of like what ZZ Top was doing, right? Look, during the 70s and, as they were rising before they took their big break, when they took their break and came back, it was fascinating, the documentary, to see how MTV changed everything, especially a band like ZZ Top, where though if you were to pick a band and say, look, they're not the MTV generation. Prior to MTV, you would say, well, ZZ Top's not an MTV band. Then when MTV explodes on the scene, ZZ Top is one of the top bands. I loved how they portrayed themselves as the heroes, the saviors of the underdog. They were always in the background, making sure the guy's going to get the girl and figuring out a way to be the hero. They are those, as you know, I mean, you know Billy so well, they're just the cool cats. And their music was distinctive. Their look was distinctive. Their persona was distinctive. And as we see, look, Billy didn't have to come on and, share those incredible stories with us, but he's that kind of person who he's been friends with you for so long. That connection is there, and it's always going to be there because he's such a genuine, positive soul.
Well, I've always said that the ultimate compliment you give someone is they're grounded, they're down to earth. That describes Billy Gibbons. That describes the band. That describes all my friends. But I don't think, even with all the documentaries and all the behind-the-scenes exposure that rock and roll acts get and different touring acts get, there is no words to adequately describe the torture of a different hotel, back on the bus or back in the plane, every damn day. Here it is, 2020. And the reason I only go out for 6 or 7 weeks every year is because my name is Ted Nugent. I'll be 72 this year. I hate to travel. I hate all beds but my bed. I get invited to the greatest hunting paradises in the world, and all I ever say is, thank you very much, but no, I'm going to stay home. So yeah. I understand because I've put myself through it all my life. I used to do 300. I know in 68, 69, and 70, I did over 350 concerts a year. If they had electricity, we would plug in. We loved to play. And if I could get there doing 100 miles an hour in the Ford Country Squire station wagon, we'd take that gig. And I drove my booking agents batty because we never turned down a gig. But it does grind you. And that's why we've lost so many to the drugs and the alcohol. They were desperate to escape the pressures. So in your life, before the pressures arrive, know that there's going to be pressures and manage your time so that you have quality control of prioritization instead of damage control of always being tortured to go and produce and be there and do it and do it and do it. You have to get the hell out. So that's my Uncle Ted tech tip on the Spirit Campfire for tonight.
Yeah. Now, so Uncle Ted, we're going to wrap up this amazing episode of the Spirit Campfire. And again, look, nothing but positive energy. I mean, there's nothing negative here. This is a perfect place to come. It's safe. It's positive. It's happy. It's everything it's really what the world needs right now. And when you think about what we just experienced tonight with Ted and Billy Gibbons, that's a treat. It's not ever going to go online and try to find that other interview where Ted had Billy Gibbons on and they were, on their own campfire show. Like, this is the first time. This is the first time that at this Spirit Campfire, Ted and Billy got together. And it's just, I feel so blessed to have been there. And I did just take a back seat because you guys are just so incredible. As a parting thought, Ted, I feel like the theme of tonight's episode was really about longevity and about how does something last so long. And I was listening very closely, and it seems like it begins with a genuine passion, because you were saying, look, I've never put the guitar down. I slept with the guitar. I have the welts on my chest from the guitar. I have to play guitar. Then there's the forming your own identity, where it's not just what everybody else was doing, but then there's the taking a break from that and coming back and continually refining it. That continual refinement seems to lead to something where it's not just Ted Nugent playing, it's it's God, it's the universe, it's the Zen state, whatever you want to call it. That familiarity, it seems like that's what connects us all when we talk about music being the universal language. There is that semitone that we all, like Paul Schaefer, want to hear, but we haven't heard it yet. And when we hear it, we know it, and it sticks with us for the rest of our life.
Well, yeah, that's probably the most important point in life is balance. You need to work really hard. You need to go to bed at night tired, knowing that you were productive and that you're in the asset column. You're providing for your family, that you're producing, you're not taking. Those priorities are alive and well all across this country. And yes, this is nothing but a glowing, positive spirit campfire. We keep it positive energy, positive spirit, positive attitude, but we can't be in denial. There are many things in this world that are far from positive right now. So my prioritization has always been choose your battles, identify those failures, especially in the world of government, your elected employees being dishonest or scamming or getting caught with corruption. We need to balance our lives for the future of our children and grandchildren to constantly monitor the job performance of our elected employees. So you will be a better teacher, a better cop, a better mother, a better father, a better brother, a better sister, a better neighbor, a better everything if you fight for upgrade. When you see failures and negativity, you can't back away from it. Just have a nice bubbly spirit campfire all the time. We have a bubbly, positive spirit campfire because throughout the day, I communicate with my mayor, my senators, my governor, my congressman in all the states because they're all my governors, because I play and I rock and roll and I hunt and I have family and friends all across the country. So I can be positive and bubbly, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on the spirit campfire because I take care of less they're not less enthusiastic. Believe me, my politics are extremely enthusiastic, but I take care of less desirable activities that are painful at times so that I can remain positive when the curtain goes up, not just for as an entertainer and to just share a positive campfire, but to be a positive force for my children, my grandchildren, my neighbors. So I would like to thank everybody that comes to my Facebook because you talk about positive energy. I would like to also identify a great military charity tonight to keep it really positive. This great company that makes wildlife nutrition called Record Rack has a website called sportsmanschoicefeed.com, sportsmanschoicefeed.com. And they put on an incredible benefit gathering, a campfire, John, every fall here in Texas for those heroes of the military and their families who've sacrificed dearly. So we'll leave it on a positive note. Find that charity for kids. Find that charity for the first responders and the cops and the military. Find the one that you're sure your hard-earned donations go to a good cause. And this sportsmanschoicefeeds.com, they spend a lot of money and bring in these warriors and these heroes from all around the country to get away from that stress that they all have had to endure. And I think every time we do a spirit campfire, John, we should identify so many of these wonderful military charities and children's charities, because as we keep this positive and bubbly, there is suffering going on. So let's fight with our family and friends, not with them, not against them, but join them in fighting to get upgrade, to get more law and order in this country, to support elected employees that represent God, family, country, productivity, risk, sacrifice, being in the asset column. And then we can have a bubbly, crazy, wild, a spirit campfire with the physics of spirituality, with attitude, if we take care of business during the day, and then we can play hard when we choose to.
Absolutely. Well, listen, everyone, thank you once again for joining us for the Spirit Campfire. To get our merchandise, go to thespiritcampfire.com. To get Ted's red hat, go to tednugent.com. Make sure you support that, the military charity or any kind of charity where you know where your money is actually going. And, why don't you just go ahead and get your write-in ballot and just put Ted Nugent for president, right?
No, don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do that.
You know what? It just might happen. It might happen on accident this time.
Well, I have an arsenal. There's my arsenal right there.
Exactly.
We do have, by the way,
Ted's arsenal. We're going to be back on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Another amazing guest, another amazing show for Ted Nugent, John Brinkus, the Spirit Campfire, Billy Gibbons. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless.
Want to see the new awesome can design for Kill Cliff? Oh? Ooh. Not yet. Now, stop right there. All right, enough clowning around. Let them see it. Not! Kill Cliff, the new Awesomeneer can design. Coming soonish. Go to killcliff.com.